Back to the Daily Dope Show. It's been a while, I know. But I feel like I need to do an update on this video that I made about a year ago, because a couple days ago this kind of blew up again, and this time it seems like finally the mainstream media might be, finally catching on to it. Or what we're talking about here is cannabinoids as a preventative measure and treatment measure for COVID. Early stage, late stage, post COVID, you name it. The thing about that is when it first started getting talked about back about a year ago, there was an NFL player, I forget who it was, that said that, oh yeah, weed cured my COVID, and he basically got canceled and shut down and called crazy and all kinds of names. So basically I decided it was time to look into it, and at the time there was already multiple bodies studying this, whether you're talking about scientific bodies related to colleges or universities or whatever. You had a lot of industry people wanting to do research on it, and countries, specifically Israel. So we'll talk about those all again. And then, so here's where, if you look here, you can see I made these two videos here. The first one was basically just an intro to tell you, like I'm doing now, that there is in fact a lot of research being done on this. The research is all really promising, and there's industries that are cashing in on it, quite frankly. I mean, they're the ones doing the research, they're the ones pushing the concept as something that is a viable concept, even in the face of all the censorship and the attempts at shutting people down and canceling them from their posts in life. Like for example, if you're a scientist at a university and you want to research this, but the university gets funding research money from the NIH, and they don't want you to do it because they want to do it with their own team. And the NIH has been studying this too, by the way, just to let you know. So it's not like they're in the dark about it, or looked into it and said, oh no, this doesn't work, so we're gonna shut down anybody that says it is working. But that's just not what's going on. The research is looking good. So anyway, that was the first video, and then the second video I kind of went into detail about the research, which I don't think I'm going to do today. I'll try to make this video short. So when I made that video, it was February of 2021, and I used this article here, which is this thing here back then, and now it's been updated as of July 2021. So when I was looking at it, this was way back in February. So a lot of things changed, and a lot of new information has been discovered, a lot of research has been concluded, and they did research on CBD, and they have a CBD formula that received an investigational new drug approval. It's called Cardiol Therapeutics, and they recently announced the enrollment of its first patient into their phase 2 and 3 outcomes trial in a high-risk patients hospitalized with COVID-19. In short, Cardiol Therapeutics' pure and potent oral CBD formula received investigational new drug approval, and its phase 2 trial is underway. So I think what that one was, and it's another way to prevent yourself from getting COVID, apparently, is you would spray the CBD spray in your mouth, and that would protect you if you were going into like a crowded area and there's a lot of COVID around, or coronavirus or whatever. And the same goes with like after you get back from the crowded area, spray again. And so then there's they talk about this study, and this study has been used to create a whole new breed of reefer madness around the subject. But apparently there's a new study that shows during the pandemic, more people started smoking weed, and the people that already smoked weed started smoking more weed. I say good. I mean, is this because of the pandemic, or is it because more legalization's happening? The attitude towards weed has just overall been relaxed. But the thing is the reason why people kept doing it is because it works, you know. If you were in the pandemic and you were in lockdown and in this mental state that all of this was giving everybody, yeah, I mean, cannabis is probably one of the best ways to cope. I mean, you know, you could turn to drugs or alcohol or whatever. I mean, there was a lot of things that, a lot of vices and a lot of ways that people do escape from their realities that increased, that didn't have good outcomes. A lot more overdose deaths, a lot more suicides. So, you know, I don't know. The research is, they do a lot of research about that every year anyway. So I don't know if assigning COVID to this is necessarily why more people smoke weed, and the people that smoke weed smoke more weed. But anyway, get back to the studies. There's THC research, and this study revealed how a THC cannabinoid may treat acute respiratory distress syndrome, also known as ARDS. ARDS is the thing that kills you when so COVID-19, it causes cytokine storms, sending the immune system into overdrive, which can trigger the ARDS, which is one of the top causes of people that die from COVID itself, respiratory problems. So the study suggests the activation of cannabinoid receptors may serve as a therapeutic modality to treat ARDS associated with COVID-19. Using THC to treat COVID-induced insomnia. So I guess another big deal with COVID, one of the effects of it, basically insomnia. Now this is basically talking about people that have to deal with COVID, not necessarily it being a side effect of COVID. So when you're talking about frontline workers or the people that were, I mean, I guess that's basically who we're talking about, the frontline workers and the medical workers. But basically that's where the sleep problem is, and the study says that cannabis can be extremely effective treatment for acute insomnia. Acute insomnia basically is just today, you know, like I can't sleep right now. Particularly when cannabis is made up of a blend of THC and CBD. In the study conducted by the University of Western Australia, THC patients reporting sleeping more hours, falling asleep faster, and getting back to sleep more easily after waking up in the middle of the night. And, you know, this is not me saying all this. This is just studies kind of reinforcing what I've been saying about cannabis as medicine for a long time. And we don't get good studies coming out of America because the DEA don't let us. And so whenever something comes up and somebody has to do a study on weed, they have to do it somewhere else. And when they do it, the results are always the exact opposite of what the FDA is trying to say. So, I mean, I wouldn't even want America to be conducting the tests for cannabis, because it's just totally, it's not, they don't do... They're always trying to find the thing that's bad about it. So then there's THC protects mice from ARDS. This is another this is some preclinical research. CBD has received the most headlines for COVID treatment to date, and they say the reasons are CBD exhibits strong anti-inflammatory properties. Also, it's non-psychoactive, which is an important factor for young and elderly patients. But CBD is not the only cannabinoid that exhibits anti-inflammatory powers. The latest study was inspired by the fact that THC binds with CB2 receptors, which are mostly located in the cells of the immune system. When these receptors are activated by THC, they can suppress the dangerous hyperinflammatory response. So my whole problem is that they always talk about trying to do things that THC is good at with CBD, because CBD don't get you high, and I'm sick of it. So I've already went off on that on the first two videos. I'm not going to go back into any kind of rants like I did then, but I am putting this information out there, and you can do what you want with it, because I've seen other people on YouTube, other independent journalists, on YouTube talking about this. And in all these cases, they want to speculate to the degree that this isn't something that's, a cure. Like they're like, well, maybe these studies need to be more, they need to study more, need to look into it more. But one of the overwhelming things that you hear from the independent journalists that I've heard talk about this, as well as the studies themselves, the articles written around the studies, nonstop talking about how smoking weed is not a good plan if you're trying to use cannabinoids to prevent or combat COVID. And I'm gonna just say, I don't know what they do to kick you off YouTube these days, but I'm gonna go ahead and say that it does work. Smoking isn't dangerous in this situation, because I had COVID, and it wasn't any different smoking weed on COVID than not on COVID. And was COVID affecting my lungs while I had it? Yeah, it sure was. But it's almost like, the things that it was affecting, I could just smoke a joint until it wasn't bad anymore. And that even included coughing, which was not really a big part of the COVID experience for me. So I don't know what they're even talking about when people are constantly talking about how smoking is not the right delivery method. Well, let me tell you something. It's the fastest one, and it's going right to the lungs, right where the COVID is doing the damage. So I don't understand, why they don't just study that instead of just assume, or, oh, smoking's dangerous. We've never seen a study yet that actually prove that smoking cannabis is dangerous. Not one single study. And yet that's guaranteed to be everybody's understanding of smoking weed, that that's just a dangerous way to consume it. And I just don't understand why they don't just study that. Oh, you know what? Hey, we're doing studies where we're checking to see if cannabinoids can combat COVID. Let's try smoking it, since that's what everybody does. Anyway, get off my little rant there. CBD reduces incidences of SARS-CoV-2. And this is coming out of the University of Chicago, and they conducted a study that showed compounds in the cannabis plant can inhibit infection with severe acute respiratory syndrome, SARS, in human lung cells. Once again, Marcia Rosner and colleagues found that cannabidiol and its metabolite 7-OH-CBD potentially block SARS-CoV-2 replication in lung cells. And that's what study after study after study keeps showing that. And that's what the most recent study coming out of Oregon showed. Now we get into another one. CBN and CVN, a couple other important cannabinoids, may treat long-haul COVID symptoms. Study published in the Journal of Biomolecular Structure and Dynamics looked at the treatment strategies to address post-COVID symptoms. Things like physical fatigue, inflammation, mental abnormalities, and organ damage are arising as post-COVID symptoms in patients known as long haulers, and treatment for these types of lingering symptoms are still unknown. Indrani Sarkar and her team performed docking and simulation studies. They found that CVV, cannabivarin, and cannabidiol from the cannabis plant combine to central nervous system proteins that are released to post-COVID symptoms. They observed that when these cannabinoids bind to CNS proteins, they can down-regulate them, which is beneficial in post-COVID treatment strategies. As a result, they concluded that cannabis has the potential to become an important therapeutic plant in the fight against lingering symptoms from COVID. So whenever you use CBD with steroids, I've seen study after study, the steroids actually work better. And here's one that talks about the steroids they use to treat COVID, and having better results when used along with CBD. Since corticosteroids have been shown recently to reduce the risk of hyperimmune system response that leads to death in nearly 70% of COVID cases, Sero seeks to understand the potential as well. And a recent UK trial showed that specific corticosteroid dexamethasone reduced deaths of patients on ventilators by 1/3. If CBD could support this proven theory, theoretically thousands more lives could be saved. They do have some May 2021 updates on the study that they did on that. Let me see. Yeah, all my highlights all disappeared, so I don't know. But they do feel that their preliminary data is encouraging, and they found CBD to be beneficial on a number of inflammatory markers. So there's another Canadian study now talking about CBD reducing COVID-19 inflammation. And then we're going to get into more study of CBD as a pharmaceutical. And there's this Sol-Gel nasal spray, which is another one of those things, like I would explain. It puts the CBD in the front lines of where you might come in contact with the virus in your sinus area. Here's another clinical trial. Canadian pharma discovers a new mechanism of action of CBD in the body, opening doors for various therapies. CBD infused exosome as a targeted COVID-19 therapy. And this is another study, and this is by Inocan Pharma. And, like I said, these studies are all being done by colleges, industry, people that want to make products because they already seen studies and they want to try to make some products on their own. And then CBD may help avert lung destruction in COVID-19. These studies are pretty promising. So I've looked at the results of some of these studies, and as you can see, some of these studies are still ongoing. But basically, these studies are doing things and looking at doing things that pharmaceutical is not doing. Pharmaceutical, have you heard about Pfizer looking into how they can avert lung destruction in COVID-19? No. All they want to do is stick a needle in you. Now we got CBD for anxiety related to COVID-19, which might be important. They did this study on Ebola patients, in which CBD was suggested as a supplementary treatment. Patients recovering from COVID-19 may undergo similar mental and social stressors due to residual chronic inflammation and autoimmune responses. And, whole plant cannabis can help with that too. We already seen studies on that. New study in Maryland to determine if CBD can treat COVID. Analysis of high CBD medical cannabis for potential COVID-19 therapy in Canada's University of Lethbridge. That's the study, I believe, that I was reading. Now here's an update to that study in case you watched that old video. On May 13th, Swish announced a new partnership with Asian International Agri-Technology Company to advance the development of cannabis therapy for COVID-19. Through the partnership, Asia will deploy Swish technology to further research, develop, test, and validate applications of its high CBD extracts to help reduce virus transmission rates. In a joint statement, executives from Asia and Swish said, in addition to the domestic research program Swish is implementing, we hope to expand on the network being developed by Asia, and Asia continues the thorough research and development process on the use of hemp extracts for the prevention of COVID-19 or SARS-CoV-2 infection, especially at a time when such significant need exists for preventative therapeutic. So basically what that sounds like is the research went so well that they partnered up with another company that plans to further develop the products and get them to market as soon as possible. Whole plant research, plant-based anti-inflammatory. Terpenes are better than CBD alone. That's what research concluded here at this study at the NTVRL, a proprietary terpene formulation developed by IBNA, which contains 30 individual terpenes that are potential anti-inflammatory agents. Researchers tested CBD alone, CBD with NTVRL, and dexamethasone, conducted on human peripheral blood molecular structures from healthy donors to study induced inflammation and performed cytotoxicity tests prior to the cytokine storm experiment to ensure cell viability. The best results came from the combination of CBD and NTVRL, which was able to inhibit around 90% of the tested cytokines. Now remember, cytokines essentially are neurotoxins. They're basically, they'll destroy anything that they come in contact with. Dexamethasone was only able to inhibit around 30% of the cytokines, which means combining terpenes with CBD might be twice as effective as the current leading treatment. In an update in May of 2021, the natural antiviral compound NTVRL1 formula showed to be quite effective against SARS-associated coronaviruses. The antiviral action was ascertained by adding the compound to lung cells before and after inoculation with HCOV229E, where it was seen to inhibit viral replication. Both NTVRL1 and cannabidiol exhibited antiviral effects, and when applied together, the researchers saw a compounding antiviral effect that was more robust than the ones used for controls. Pathway research uncovers more evidence that cannabis can calm cytokine storms. So, I'm kind of getting exhausted just going through the studies in this one article. But I will drop the links to all these in the description, and you can check them out if you want. But I just wanted to go quickly over the preponderance of studies and evidence that cannabinoids in general, especially THC and CBD, inhibit coronaviruses and any viruses, really. I mean, that's the main theme of all these studies, is that the virus, once it comes into contact with a cannabinoid, it doesn't stand much of a chance. And also, if you have cannabinoids in your system, specifically THC, you are going to block the ACE2 receptor, and CBD does too as well. You will block the ACE2 receptor, and the virus won't have nowhere to enter a cell. This is just, this isn't, some weed, news guy that's just pumping some anti-vax shit at you. This is what you should be doing, is looking at what is real research going on when it comes to these subjects, because all they do on TV is call people like me names and tell you to go get a vaccine, because all they're doing is working for the corporations that are marketing the vaccine, and they're the marketers, and the marketing strategy is to scare you and to basically denounce any other method of any method of treatment. I've never really heard treatment being an option coming from the people that are running the coronavirus response. But if you look at recent news and you just type cannabis COVID, literally hundreds of articles are available from different media sources talking about it, dating all the way back to about a year ago when this whole thing started becoming a thing. And of course, there's also the big race of reefer madness publishers and writers coming up with their own way to spin this into reefer madness, but it's just not. There's no reason to ever think treating anything with cannabis is dangerous or isn't effective when there's studies on basically everything that people like me tell you that cannabis can treat. There's a study behind it, a peer-reviewed, double-blind, placebo, real studies, not, and some of them by the NIH themselves from time to time. So I'm not blowing smoke up your ass, but a lot of people will try to. And speaking of the NIH, here it is, right here. The very first time I've ran into an NIH study about cannabinoids. I think there was something in 2020, but here we are in 2021 in February where they talk about coronavirus being possibly treatable with cannabinoids because of hyperinflammation and the cytokine release syndrome. And they looked at many anti-inflammatory drugs and their safety profiles and all that. And essentially, they are saying that cannabinoids might help prevent mild to severe disease. And if you look at it, just in the peer-reviewed area of the internet, if you just type peer-reviewed studies, cannabis and COVID, there's thousands of pages because everybody wants to get in on this. CBD for COVID-19. Here, this is the out of Chicago study. Talking about the CBD inhibiting the virus and moving to human trials. So this is kind of speeding up trials in general for cannabis-related applications, as people are scrambling all around the world to study this. And it's obviously easier to study CBD than THC in a lot of places, so that's why, again, you're going to get more people talking about CBD. And here's the New York 4 NBC News talking about the study out of Oregon that everybody got their foot in the door to finally be able to say something about it because of the study in Oregon. And this study is talking about some of the compounds in cannabis may prevent the entry of the coronavirus into healthy human cells, according to the study published by the Journal of Nature Products. The research was conducted at the Oregon State University, led by Richard Van Bremen, a scientist who Oregon State's Global Hemp Initiative or Innovation Center, College of Pharmacy, and Linus Pauling Institute. The study suggests two compounds found commonly in hemp, cannabigerolic acid and cannabidiolic acid, CBGA and CBDA, prevent coronavirus from entering cells that typically line internal organs and skin in lab settings. In the case study, the acids were able to bind to the SARS-CoV-2 spike protein, the same target used in COVID-19 vaccines and antibody therapy. Once bound, the step could block a critical step in the pathogen process used to infect the cell. That's pretty important because that's kind of like when I made my last videos, I was basically saying, this is basically the same thing or better than a vaccine because it doesn't care if the virus mutates. That doesn't matter to cannabinoids. I don't know. I got a few other people that wrote articles about the same study, and I've kind of cherry-picked a couple things out of each one just to talk about. And this Benzinga, back in November of 2021, November 28th, they kind of go over, what's going on with this study in cannabis and coronavirus. So in the early months of the pandemic, various studies linked pot to both adverse and beneficial results. The trend continues today with little conclusivity known about the cannabis-COVID medical connection, if indeed there is one. The physician cited only the physician cited one study that concluded cannabis users could be more vulnerable to the contagion and worsening conditions due to COVID-19. He noted additional analysis that found people predisposed to cannabis use disorder saw increased likelihood of hospitalization from the virus. Now, this is the Reefer Madness crew coming in. Basically, every step of the pandemic, there was some really scary thing that might happen to you, like going to the hospital, dying, getting a breakthrough case if you were vaccinated. So any of those things, they'll just go ahead and say, oh, hey, guess what? If you have cannabis use disorder, that's going to happen to you. You know, and it's just, I don't believe any of it. I haven't seen any studies. These studies that they're talking about are, we'll see in a minute, not what they're saying they are. In the studies, it concluded CBD might play a role in lessening the severity of a cytokine storm. And I say to that, so does THC. But they're never going to tell you that you can just smoke weed and it's going to protect you from COVID. And people watching this video might say, well, I was smoking weed every day, 10 times a day, and I still caught COVID. I'm not saying it's going to 100% work, but, you know, apparently nothing does. So if you're planning on not catching COVID, good luck with all that. But the thing is if you're using cannabis and COVID enters your system, it's not going to do the kind of damage that it would if you weren't using cannabis. But that's not the only thing. You know, COVID is a virus and it causes infections. So you have to fight the virus and fight infections and all that stuff. And the best way to do that is to maintain a good, healthy diet. Be exercising. Don't be sediment. Don't just be not doing things. I don't know. I mean, it seems like most of the things that the government and they wanted you to do all these things, the WHO and the CDC, all the stuff they were telling you to do was stuff that you would normally tell people that are really high risk from dying from the thing. Tell them that while you let everybody else get the virus that can handle it. That's usually what happens with every virus. But since we didn't do it that way, you know, we still have to deal with it today. Preclinical evidence suggests that THC and CBD may reduce the severity of acute respiratory distress syndrome, but clinical evidence is still lacking. Well, I don't know how much more you need. All the studies from all the places and Israel. Cannabis as a treatment for COVID-19. Open access government. This is basically another article talking about another study done by the NIH, which was done in January of 2021. Fighting the storm. Could the TNFA and anti-IL-6C sativa cultivars tame cytokine storm in COVID-19? And it's just another study to that effect. And basically this article just talks about how, you know, it's the evidence is growing around cannabis as a treatment for COVID. C. sativa, a type of cannabis, was found in a cytokine storm study to reduce multiple cytokines and pathways related to inflammation and fibrosis. Two of the cytokines that C. sativa reduced were TNFA and IL-6, which are thought to be the main targets when trying to block COVID-19 cytokine storm and acute respiratory distress syndrome. A 2020 mouse model study found that CBD and active cannabinoid compound found in cannabis reduce pro-inflammatory cytokines and improve the clinical symptoms of mice with symptoms similar to COVID-19. Studies suggest that CBD may work as part of a treatment of COVID-19 by reducing the cytokine storm and protecting lung tissue from inflammation, which anything that the FDA has for you doesn't do that. They don't have any solution at all to the cytokine storm, except for to talk about how you should get another booster. That's not a good idea. And I'm not sitting here saying that it's my opinion and that my medical information tells me that I'm not trying to tell people what to do. I'm just saying what's a good idea and what's not a good idea. I don't know. I just don't think it would be the thing that you recommend to somebody. If you're talking about, oh, hey, you should get the vaccine and the booster so you don't even catch COVID, that I can safely say, I think, without getting my channel deleted, isn't even true and probably should be considered medical misinformation at this point. And of course, they're going to talk about, is inhaling cannabis smoke a good idea for COVID-19 patients? And of course, they say no, it's not. But they don't really say that. They're just like, many delivery mechanisms don't involve the lungs and leave out potential harmful substances that come with smoke inhalation. Well, what does that tell you? Is that the delivery mechanisms isn't getting the cannabinoids to your lungs. I mean, the best possible thing I think you can do with cannabinoids is to use some kind of oil, like RSO, CBD oil, preferably RSO, which is mostly THC, and just rub it right on your chest. I mean, it'll absorb. You can put some, I recommend, Dr. Weed Commando recommends you rub some, coconut oil over it so it's not sticky and it figures out where to go. Here's another NIH article, this time in March of 2021. Cannabis inhibits SARS-CoV-2 replication and promotes the host innate immune response. Here we report that cannabidiol, a compound produced by the cannabis plant, inhibits SARS-CoV-2 infection, CBD, and its metabolite 7-OH-CBD, but not congeneric cannabinoids, potentially block SARS-CoV-2 replication in lung epithelial cells. CBD acts as a cellular inflammation, inhibiting viral gene expression and reversing many effects of SARS-CoV-2 on host gene transcription. CBD induces interferon expression and upregulates its antiviral signaling pathway. A cohort of human patients previously taken CBD had significantly lower SARS-CoV-2 infection incidence of up to an order in magnitude relative to match pairs or general population. This study suggests CBD and its active metabolite 7-OH-CBD as potential preventative agents and therapeutic treatments for SARS-CoV-2 at early stages of infection. This is a study at the NIH in March of 2021, but I'm sure somebody got censored for talking about it. And I hope I don't at this point. And then there, the Reefer Madness started coming out about this. But also, like I just said, whenever you need to demonize something, just talk about it, and make sure you talk about those people with the CUD, cannabis use disorder. Heavy marijuana users who have also vaccinated may be susceptible to breakthrough cases of COVID-19, a study found. So this is a study in World Psychology found that those with a substance use disorder dependence on marijuana, alcohol, cocaine, opioids, and tobacco were more likely to contract the coronavirus after receiving both their vaccination shots. Let's just say that whatever the study is, there's no way you can convince me that this whole theory or concept of breakthrough cases is even a thing, because the vaccine, and this isn't misinformation, the vaccine was never intended to prevent transmission. All the CEOs said that. That's not what the warp speed protocols called for. So the whole idea that you can do a study where you're like, oh, we gave this guy 2 shots and he still got COVID. Well, you better check and see what kind of substance he uses, because we're going to do a study. And yeah, basically what you're trying to really say is that you studied a bunch of people that have these substance use disorders that you're talking about, and the only way you can study them is if they're in an institution checking boxes for you, because this isn't some study where they go out knocking on doors and or they paid participants to be experimented on. This is a data mining operation. Again, that's all they ever. That's the basis of all reefer madness is data mining operations, where they find a set group of people, particularly people that are in trouble, and I mean their health outcomes are usually not that good anyway, and they've been institutionalized a lot of the times of their life. So these studies don't mean anything. But the New York Post just loves to post propaganda and reefer madness, so that's what you get there. The KNF morning brief one day on January 12th was clogged up with the study, the Oregon study, and you had Bloomberg, Forbes, and KGW all writing about it. New Beauty even wrote about it, whoever they are. They're, in the beauty product world, CBG and CBD are things that are helping them in many ways. You can make many products that have those in it that are healthy for your skin, hair products. I mean, that's if you look into hemp and see the millions of products that you can make out of it, it's amazing that more people aren't doing that, just making new product lines out of things that you can derive from the plant. But these people are happy that, CBGA and CBDA can prevent COVID-19. And now here's the study itself. This study was done in January of 2022. Cannabis blocks cellular entry of SARS-CoV-2 and emerging variants. The biggest problem I have with this study, as usual, is the CBD. And then the study starts out with as a complement to vaccines. So I guess you can't do a study unless you also study people that have been vaccinated. Did they include people that weren't vaccinated in a like some kind of a control group? I didn't read the whole study, so I don't know, but it seems a little bit like that was added there because someone made them add it there. I really don't understand why you would have a study like this and care whether or not, that it's a complement to vaccines. We want to know what this can do on its own without the vaccines. I mean, sure, you also want to know if someone did get the vaccine, is it going to affect them differently? But I mean, overall, a study like this should not include the vaccines. The vaccines are not part of a natural thing that happened to somebody. They caught a virus, which in this virus's case is probably not natural either. But once you catch the virus, what are you going to do then? If you didn't already have the vaccine and you got the virus, you want to have it block entry into other cells. So another thing about this study that's very interesting is that they're saying that the two variants of concern that they've had to deal with since the study came out, it's been effective there too. So basically, the effectiveness will continue to be true down the line when new variants come around. Cannabis and COVID-19 patients, new insights from Israel. And like I said, Israel is the leader in cannabis research because they've never really had prohibition like we have here. And the medical marijuana laws that they wrote were basically so that they could do all this research that they've been doing. And they've been leading this research for decades. So when it comes to the specifically cannabis and COVID research, they've done the research on all levels, whether it be preventing COVID from taking over your cells to treating cytokine storms and post-COVID treatment. They've done it all. And of course, they're going to mention that the FDA and WHO advises against smoking it, but whatever. The part I wanted to focus on here is the cannabinoids and cytokine storms in patients with severe COVID-19 infection, We're talking you are what they call you late stage at the hospital, throw you on the remdesivir, put you on a ventilator, and start watching the clock until you die. That in that case, we find that, yeah, in these cases, the lungs fail to remove harmful gases like carbon dioxide and are unable to effectively provide oxygen to the body. That's when you have somebody on a ventilator, you flip them upside down so that forces them to push the oxygen through more and push the other gases out more, and they're still registering on the oxygen meter in the 70s. So that's what we're talking about, someone in that situation. This helps the virus multiply rapidly in the lungs. When you have these gases lingering and no oxygen going anywhere, the virus just starts to go crazy. And that's when the immune system tries to combat it with a cytokine storm, and you get the ARDS. So endocannabinoids produced in the respiratory system and cannabinoid-induced bronchial dilation suggest a significant therapeutic potential for cannabinoids in the treatment of respiratory diseases, including COVID-19 and ARDS. What they're saying there is endocannabinoids, which is cannabinoids produced in your body by your body. You don't need to smoke weed or take any THC pill. This is done completely natural, and no weed is needed. So your body produces endocannabinoids in the respiratory system and everywhere else, but in the respiratory system, the ones that they've studied there basically induce bronchial dilation, and cannabinoids themselves too. So obviously, if you smoke a joint, and I'm just saying this on my own, this is just kind of my opinion, but if you smoke a joint, you're putting them cannabinoids right where they need to be. Just saying. And, people are going to say, oh, this guy's crazy. He's telling people with COVID to smoke weed and it'll cure them. I didn't say any of that. But I did tell you that when you smoke weed, it does go right straight to your lungs. I think you already knew that. And those cannabinoids do things while they're there. And if cannabinoids cause dilation to the bronchial, I'm sure that's, what they're trying to tell you. Detailed examination shows that CBD partially or totally reverse the damage caused to the lungs, such as tissue overgrowth, scarring, and swelling. I don't think their vaccine does that. I'll check into it, though. A study showed the reason for this to be significant increase in the levels of apelin, a peptide made by cells of the heart, lung, brain, fat tissue, and blood that works in reducing inflammation. In the ARDS model, apelin levels dropped close to zero in the lungs and blood, but when the scientists gave the mice CBD, apelin levels increased by 20 times. I mean, the science is clear, guys. If you trust the science, this is it's telling you a lot of things that are good. Whole plant cannabis extracts have also been shown to reduce blood coagulation in animal models. It is known that many of the negative systemic effects of COVID-19 appear to be related to altered coagulation. So it's possible that cannabis may be useful in managing these sequelae too. And of course, this is just a disclaimer. However, despite all the observations above, together with less grounded rumors and promises, there remains little clear evidence regarding the effects of cannabis on the course of COVID-19. And these are the people that are doing the best research, the most robust research, you might call it. I don't really know what else to say about all this. I discourage anybody from telling people what to do when it comes to treating themselves, and I won't do it either. I refuse to. It's your own business how you want to treat your situation when it comes to your health, and it's nobody else's business whether or not you smoke weed to fight COVID, or whether you get the vaccine, or whatever you're taking vitamins and zinc and all this stuff. Everybody has their own little set of things that are causing their health not to be right, ways that COVID could, make things worse for them, ways that, if you hear about the vaccines and, the fact that there's people getting injuries from the vaccines, and those are the kind of injuries that you can't take the chance of with the things that are already going on with you. I mean, there's just a lot of things that people have no business knowing about your health, right? And to be honest, I don't know. I all I can say is you gotta just do your own research. You gotta take all the information that's available to you and do what you gotta do with it, because it's all about what works for you, all right? But when it comes to cannabinoids, it seems like whether you're a mouse or a human subject, I've heard anecdotal evidence, to the positive side of this. I've not heard any anecdotal evidence to the negative side, or I haven't even seen any. We seen that one little blip in this article where they talked about, there's been some negative outcomes. I haven't seen any. I haven't heard of any. I don't even know what they would be. So I don't know. That's all I really got to say on this. I kind of went longer than I wanted to, but I'm glad I could make this video, and I hope it brought value to somebody. Just to me, it feels like rehash, but it's also reinforcement, because this is ongoing. Some of these studies, maybe they're not concluded in certain senses of the word, but the people that are moving forward with products are doing so with the confidence that they're helping people. And I mean, I'm sure they want to make some money too, but this looks like this is being driven by the fact that it works. Like, people aren't just making these products because it seems like a good scam. Oh, hey man, you can take this mouse spray and you won't catch COVID. They're not. I don't think that would be. That wouldn't work out. Someone would buy it once, and if they got COVID, they would sue the company. You can't make that kind of claim anyway. But if you want to try the products, it's because you feel like they might work, because you understand the science. And that's all this all is. It's just science. And to say that there's only one scientific approach to fighting a virus is also a little bit weird. Like, if someone's going to die from a simple virus, you want to be able to use any and all tools available, whether it be like ivermectin, or if you think the vaccine is the thing, okay, you do that. Whatever, the vitamins, the eating good, the exercise, all of this. But, if you're in a situation where none of that's really going to help you, cannabinoids is something to consider. And if you don't believe me, you can just do the research on your own. There's literally, I would have to say, hundreds of thousands of pages now of actual research about this topic. So that's all I got. Nice to see you all again. Glad to be still able to make videos or whatever. You might see me making some more videos. YouTube's threatening to take away my $2 a year that I make doing this, so maybe I'll make a few videos. Who knows? But that's it. Have a good one. Later.